So welcome everyone, and thank you all so much for joining today's Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network information session. Today's session is titled The Native Village of Unalakleet Drone Team Developing Community Drone Capacity. And I just wanted to welcome you, the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network. We're part of the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center, one of 9 regional climate adaptation science centers all around the country. The goal of our network is to be a resource that helps support tribes as they work on climate adaptation across the state of Alaska. We're of course based at the International Arctic Research Center at UAF's Trothia campus within the traditional territory of the Lower Tanana Dene people. And I want to acknowledge the past, present, and future stewardship of the people from this land, to which I only joined just 2 years ago. 2 years I've been here part of the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center, and I've been participating in and working with the Tribal Resilience Learning Network since it ramped up. I've also been working alongside the Native Village of Unalakleet drone team for the past couple of months in a few capacities. So I'm really excited to see today's session and for us all to get to learn from this awesome group. So I want to welcome everybody on both platforms. We are here on Zoom, as well as everybody joining us on Facebook. Just a quick reminder, today's session is being recorded and it will be available on the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network website after the session is finished. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in text in the chat. And there will be a question and comment period at the end of the session. So feel free to drop any questions or comments that you want to discuss later into the chat at any point in time, and we'll collate those and go through them during the Q&A period. Additionally, welcome to everybody who's joining on our phone line. We try to make things as accessible as possible, and that's really helpful. So yeah, unless there is any further ado, let me start our sharing. So a quick overview of today's session. There are 3 key things we want to do today, which is introduce the Native Village of Unalakleet drone team, go over some questions a community might have where drone could be a tool to address those questions, and then how to put that team together so they can be confident, operational, and build community capacity. So without further ado, I want to introduce 3 members of the NVU drone team that are here with us today. The Deputy Director of the Native Village of Unalakleet, John Henry, alongside the Associate Director of the Model Forest Policy Program, Margie Hall, and of course, the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center's own Deputy Director, Jessica Garron. So I also wanted to point out here, Katie Daniels, our pilot in command, and Harry Ivanoff, another NVU pilot here in the photo on screen. But with no further ado, take it away, John.
I'd like to first thank Alaska Tribal Resilience Network for allowing us to host this presentation. Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Mike, for receiving the presentation. And thank you, Jessica. This is an exciting project. So like, again, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to listen onto this multi-project effort surrounding small uncrewed aircraft systems. You may have heard the term small unmanned aircraft systems, but just think of it interchangeable. And in the upcoming slides, I'll use the acronym SUAS. So today's discussion will be on remote uncrewed aircraft systems, inspections, and response team development in the Bering Strait region. Next slide, please. So as Mike indicated, I am the Deputy Director, and we had Mike introduce Jessica Garron as well as Katie and Margie. We do have other members on the team that were part of this effort. We have Commander Jerome Alfendor from the Arctic Emergency Management Specialist in U.S. Coast Guard Sector Anchorage. We also had our instructor led Andrew Wentworth, who was associated with the Alaska Center for Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration, or QUASI. Next slide, please. So as Mike indicated, these are our team So left to right, myself, I'm the NVU US program lead. We have Katie Daniel in the center, and CSR NVU US pilot in command. And the right is Carrie Ivanoff as our NVU US pilot. Next slide, please. So there was the beginning of where this all came to. And the story about it happens. My backstory is when I attended a climate change event. I was held in Anchorage. The presentation focused on the different ways drones could be used. It was then that I knew this was a way to leverage technology to provide information to decision makers, whether it be local, regional, or statewide, in a more accessible and cost-effective manner. So the dream became an idea. The idea led to forming connections, which led me to my first team member, Margaret Hall. From her, it led to Jessica. Afterwards, the team of 3 blossomed to a team of 9. It was with this team that we went into a deep dive on ways to make it easier for decision makers to address climate change by providing them a set of tools to navigate through. Next slide, please. So climate change has been impacting rural communities in numerous ways over the years. One of the impacts that Unalakleet has seen is coastal erosion. In August 2019, the National Weather Service provided a coastal flood warning with water levels ranging 8 to 9 feet above the normal highest tide line, which occurred between Saturday morning and early afternoon. From the before and after photos, you can see how much of an impact this one event had in such a short time. Not only were the woods washed away, but the vegetation was stripped. The winds were southwest at 20 to 30 miles an hour with gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Next slide, please. So another instance of the impact of climate change is an oil spill that occurred south of Unalakleet, more specifically near Kodiak. A LEO network observer and longtime ADN reporter, Stas Hollander, posted this oil spill event near Kodiak, which was published February 28, 2018, and updated March 1st, 2018. And she observed the following. Bad weather Wednesday was preventing oil spill responders from reaching a remote channel north of Kodiak where up to 3,000 gallons of heavy fuel spilled on Monday. Hurricane force winds caused a private dock to collapse Monday morning. Oil stored there was dumped into the waters of Bering Strait between Bognac Island and Suyak Island, about 50 miles north of Kodiak. As of Wednesday morning, however, 45 to 60 mile per hour winds and 5 to 8 foot seas kept any pollution responders in boats from getting to the spill. The Coast Guard flew over the area Tuesday, and responders took a look at the spill from the air. Next slide, please. So going northeast of Kodiak, you can see how tank inspections were impacted by climate change. Again, the LEO network observer, Stanley Taylor, and when I mention LEO network, for those who don't know, if this is under the Alaskan Native Tribal Health Consortium, it is a way for people to document observations. So observer Stanley Taylor posted a tank event in Catlin, Alaska, which was published June 20, 2020. And this was his observations. Monthly permafrost caused the 2,000 gallon fuel tank to tilt and slide 4 or 5 feet. Also, the underground propane tanks outlying visible. The propane tanks are empty. They did not want to refill them. They have started on a plan to empty the fuel tank and relocate it or fix the foundation. Next slide. So search and rescue sea ice, as seen here, we're going north to the northern part of Alaska. You can see how climate change is impacting subsistence that led to a search and rescue. Another LEO network observer, Jake Bell and Heather Digman, posted the search and rescue in Ukiavik, Alaska, and was published on April 29, 2014. And this is what she states. Off the coast in the Arctic Ocean, the high winds pushed the young sea ice out and it broke off pretty close to the shore. And one whaling crew lost their trail. 3 men had to be rescued by boat. They were drifting on a piece of ice that broke off from the trail and their equipment. One trail made by a whaling crew was lost due to the ice breaking. So with these events happening, if you're thinking to yourself, what can be done to my area to help us be better prepared? You would be filling in the shoes in which I pondered before coming across the most likely of solutions. Next slide, please. So the solution came in the form of a grant opportunity to the Department of Interior, BIA, Tribal Resilience, Ocean, Coastal Management and Planning Category 4, in which Native Village of Unalakleet was awarded a sum of money of $133,166, and it covered periods from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20. And entitled Improving Local Decision Making in Alaskan Communities with Drones and Online Climate Data Tools. The objectives were to basically address future climate change related ocean and coastal management planning challenges, and secondly, build long-term resilience with the establishment of a self-sustaining, localized, and ongoing data collection and analysis program. So our team of 9 were able to develop a way for decision makers to review climate change using the project's results depicted in the next 7 slides. Next slide, please. So one of the deliverables was categorizing the climate change into 9 scientific study areas. Going from the top and going clockwise, there were wildlife, extractable minerals, cultural and historical sites, plant community, water quality, infrastructure, flood preparation, which includes rivers and ice and sea, coastal erosion, and air quality. Next slide, please. So the second outcome was creating the unmanned aircraft, or UAS, and comparison matrix, where our drone experts provide a breakdown of the associated components of using a drone for each of the 9 scientific study areas on the aircraft, sensors, software, and training time, and was broken down into a cost ranging from a low of 0 to 5,000, a medium of 5,000 to 10,000, and a high of 10,000 and up. So basically, this allows decision makers, if they wanted to create their own program and they were limited by budget, they can look through these different breakdowns on 9 scientific study areas, and we're able to select the appropriate drone that fits their needs. Next slide, please. So the third outcome was to have our economists provide a comparative cost analysis of incorporating the cost of drone-based monitoring compared to usual techniques. And this looks a bit complex, so I'll try and break it down. So she started by doing a comprehensive literature review, which involved more than 100 primary research studies and case reports. She then did what she termed an analogous cost and data accuracy assessment from multiple sources for each of the 9 scientific study areas. From there, she derived a cost estimate from the results of multiple primary studies representing the 9 scientific study areas. And lastly, she adjusted those values to a constant dollar and rescaled it to a per unit cost. For example, in infrastructure, it looked at the pricing, it compared it to the associated use, and it came down to roughly like $1.29 per foot, as an example. Next slide, please. So the fourth outcome was the creation of the online tools comparison matrix. So this approach mirrored some of the NOAA's efforts in distilling information into a spreadsheet. This project added additional components such as data, geographic area, published date, required time to review, and bandwidth. So there's a lot of components within the spreadsheet of trying to distill it as quickly as possible. So data was broken down to low, medium, high, where low was associated with 1 scientific study area, medium pertaining to if it applied to more than one study area, and high if it required a high level of knowledge to interpret the data. The geographic was separated by the following. G1 corresponding to a specific region of Alaska as either far north, interior, southwest, south central, and southeast. G2 associated with statewide, G3 for national and or international, and G4 for national or local specific site. Published data was separated by date range, P1 corresponding to real-time data, P2 associated with dates from 2010 to 2020, P3 respectively for 2000 to 2010, P4 and P5, you can see the respective dates, 1990, 2000, and less than 1990. So the required time to review was broken down into 4 sections in increments of 30 minute ranges. For example, R21 was from 0 to 30 minutes. So you can see kind of the breakdown of the other areas as well. And the last column was bandwidth required to view information. I know Alaska has issues in certain rural areas of bandwidth. So we looked at ways to try and break this down. So we looked at B1, which corresponds to text and graph of 0 to 5 megabytes. B2 is text and video with 5 to 10 megabytes. B3, text and video with map, which could range from 10 to 20 megabytes. And B4, it was a graphical user interface. So with that said, and there's a lot of information to digest, but for example, if a tribe located within South Central who wants to look at a specific scientific study area, needing current data that has poor internet service, they could probably look at and select links that has like data column of low, geographic area column of G1, published data column of P2, and bandwidth column of B1 as an example. Next slide, please. So the fifth component looked at the contractual considerations. So currently it's now broken down to a business contract and a climate change contract. Essentially, this contract could be used for either locally to the tribe, to a local government or corporation, or regionally, or even statewide. For example, between different state agencies or university institutions. Basically, it provided a template for those that wanted to establish a contract to render services. Next slide, please. So the second component was looking at applying data and combining decision making. Excuse me. So with the data obtained from the small uncrewed or SUS, knowing which documents to provide data into will allow decision makers a broader perspective on the issue at hand. For instance, if a tribe did some infrastructure or coastal erosion study, then a good area to provide those data sets into would be the local hazard mitigation plan. Another area to consider is if a tribe includes search and rescue into the program, then an item that would need to be updated would be their small community emergency response plan. But there was a detailed listing that was done in the feasibility study that looked at a broader range of documents. So these are just some cases. Next slide, please. The last component was a stakeholder survey. An email was sent to the local community members within Alaska on a survey and looked at the types of data that is important and where they get their source of information. The results were the type of data were from highest score to lowest. You click on the top left, and then there were the following. Infrastructure was first, followed by water quality, then wildlife, next was coastal erosion, then air quality, flooding, followed by cultural and historical sites, then plant community, and last, extractable resources. For the types of data that they go to get their information from highest to lowest, they were the following. They listed traditional ecological knowledge as at the top, followed by online data resources and tools, and then data from agencies, whether it be TGGS or U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The other one was on-site data collection, whether it be webcams or UAS. university provide resources within next, and lastly was the other. So this information provided an invaluable reflection on a type of climate change and the sources of information that one goes to. So this puts in perspective of how the data is what data sources needed and where to go to get it. Next slide, please. So we're at our first questions and comments section. I just want to note that the top left was where we were testing the schedule beyond the Unalakleet boards landing, and the top right was where we did an aerial videography of the Unalakleet bulk fuel tank farm. So I'll open up to at least 2 questions. If anybody has any questions on the topics we discussed.
Just also want to encourage folks to put questions in the chat also as we go along. We can take them at the end if they come up. And I see Emma Pate raised her hand. Go ahead.
So my question is, who was your drone expert that you were referring to?
So the drone expert was Jessica Garron.
What was that?
Jessica Garron.
Okay. And where does she work?
I'm sorry. What was the question again?
I can answer it, John. I'm Jessica Garron. I'm the person that John was mentioning. I work at the Climate Adaptation Science Center with Mike DeLue, Melinda, and Krista. And I will put my email in the chat so that you have access to that for any other questions that we don't answer today.
Okay, thanks.
And
Thank you.
John, I see one more question in the chat. How did you choose the UAS that you settled on for your uses?
Okay, so the first portion of this presentation was on the feasibility study, and we just provided a listing of different drones for the different 9 scientific study areas. But the drones that were selected will be on the second part of this second part of the presentation. And Jessica Garron did select the drones that were used for the second part of the presentation. But essentially the first part was just providing a listing of different drones with the different price ranges for those different scientific study areas.
And to add on to John's answer, I decided on the specific drones we use for this program based upon what we were allowed to buy. This project, the next phase of this project John is going to discuss, was funded by the Department of Homeland Security. And so we had to we were only allowed to purchase American made and American supported drones. And so that was what drove the specific vendor that we went with. And John will talk about those aircraft in the next bit. Thank you.
I have another question. This is Emma. So I saw on one of the charts or the slides, there is ArcGIS Pro connectivity with one of the drones. Are you planning to use ArcGIS Pro with your data collected by your drones or your drone program?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Emma. So those were options in terms of software that could be used to process the data, and that is a good tool to use. we're analyzing data at a different detail. But with that portion, like I said earlier, that was just a listing of possible items to consider for the different price ranges for the different line scientific studiers. However, on the second part, Jessica Garron had selected, looked at two different types of software. We can go over those maybe at the end, on the end of this presentation, where we look at we can answer your question at the end of the second portion for questions and comments. But I will get back to Emma on that. But there was Join Deploy and Pick 4D. And if we have time at the end, maybe just maybe Garrett can go over some of the details on either of those. If you have any further questions, Emma.
Sure. Maybe if we need to, maybe on a separate discussion too, since our department at Norton Health Corporation is in the process of doing our GIS Pro licensing. We went through the initial training with GIS.
Yeah, so if those don't know, BIA is giving tribes the ability to get licenses for free on the different Esri products. So if you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me after the meeting, and I can gladly go over the details. If you're a tribe that wants to get these kinds of licenses, I can direct you to that. But I do, looking at time, I do want to continue on. If those that have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat. At the end, if you have time, we can go over those. But thank you for the questions. Could you go to the next slide, please? So from the past slides, you have seen some of the climate change impacts, whether it be coastal erosion, oil spill, tank inspection, search and rescue, or wildlife, naming a few that indicated that the 2020 Unalakleet UAS feasibility study proved that yes, drones are useful for observing, monitoring, and doing data collections. So going forward, the next slides, both the U.S. Coast Guard and NVU want improved awareness for better decisions. Next slide, please. So under Jessica Garron as the principal investigator, the next chapter in the SUAS was performed under the Arctic Domain Awareness Center, ADAC, that was funded for fiscal year 21-22, with a focus on remote uncrewed aircraft systems, system inspection, and response team development in the Bering Strait region. The objectives were train pilot teams in Unalakleet, develop operational UAS protocols for emergency operations, river or coastal erosion, oil spill, tank inspection, and search and rescue, and then conduct Bering Strait regional feasibility assessment. Lastly was the public engagement. Next slide, please. So the first component was to do pilot training. Native Village of Unalakleet did a recruitment, and the team selected the pilots. The instructor-led training occurred weekly via Zoom and was supplemented with SUAS-related reading material. The pilots in training registered to take a test at a FAA test facility. Currently, NVU has 3 14 CFR 107 certified remote pilots and have been trained in using the small uncrewed aircraft systems that Jessica provided, which were the Skydio X2E and the Skydio S2s. Next slide, please. So the second component was to develop UAS emergency assessment protocols. These are basically a step-by-step approach to implement the use of small uncrewed aircraft systems in gathering data for any of the following: coastal erosion, oil spill, tank inspection, and search and rescue. These protocols would help the pilots run through those different services and be able to do it consistently, and to ensure that the data collected was done in a manner that the end user could be confident on the data that was collected. Next slide, please. So Mike, if you do another click. Yes. This next slide.
I believe something's gone wrong with the image here, John. Sorry about that.
Oh, I think you just got to do another click. Yeah, there you go. So the third component was to determine a long-term regional plan on emergency preparedness on the following components: infrastructure inspection, coastal erosion monitoring, flood damage, search and rescue, and detecting oil leaks or oil spills. With the success at Unalakleet, the SUS team can provide services at a regional, state, and national level. Next slide, please. So the fourth component was to identify community needs, and each community may have their unique special situation, whether they be in a certain air class space, or if they're prone to, say, flooding or coastal erosion, or if they have a lot of permafrost inundation happening in the area, or any other special needs. So being able to document those types of needs could help allow the team to better plan their flight plan, to be able to provide the needs that the community is looking for in the manner that the drones can do. Next slide, please. So the first component was to be able to outreach for UAS-related information. On the top left, we were able to go to Fairbanks to do training, and during that event, there was an event happening at the university institution. Within the building, if you're not familiar with the Magic Bus, the movie that the bus that is associated with this person that was in the wilderness. But so basically, move that bus within this building, and the team was going to go and do a 3D model of this bus in an enclosed building, concurrently alongside some of the physics students that were doing experiments on projecting a mass of the material at a certain angle. So this was happening concurrently, and we were able to witness the event and ask questions during the situation. We also, under this component, we're able to do some publications on newsletters. This particular newsletter, we looked at the NV Community Fair that was held here in Unalakleet. That was on March 3rd. We sent out mail postings and made it known to the public. But basically, this is where we got to present to the community on some of the results thus far, and be able to interact with the decision makers in town. During that event, there were some people that had questions pertaining to the use of the drones, so that was a really good, positive event. Next slide, please. So the sixth component is basically establishing a recommended UAS office setup. So it's really important to have the basic supplies to do to have a successful drone program. One of those could be the following, like radio communications, whether it be pilot radio specific communication units. Other than that, can include spare batteries and chargers to go along with your drone. Recommend like a Pelican briefcase, like a hardened briefcase. We have your standard operating procedures or your protocols that you develop for your different services. You'd have a laptop and computer that's appropriately sized with the memory and CPU that would be needed to process the data. And a go-to bag, like you're traveling within a region, or have like a go-to bag that has all of your necessities that you need while you're traveling away from the office. Next slide, please. The last report was on the cost analysis. This was a little more detailed. The economist went ahead and looked at the regional expansion feasibility assessment, and basically looked at industry best practices, contractor, looked at the contractor and analyzed and evaluated the range of costs and timing of a community-based UAS pilot program in the Norton Sound and Bering Strait region. And this cost analysis was different than the prior because it broke it down into different sections pertaining to population. For example, we look at population up to 1,000, which could be Elam, Quake, Unalakleet, population up to 5,000, which could include Nome, and a regional scenario, which could include like Nome and Bethel. So this one is a little more involved process. It is an ongoing cost analysis, but at the end, like we have a well-documented region-wide cost analysis. Next slide, please. So the future considerations on U.S. expansion. This team will look at in the future and ongoing. We'll be looking at the regional economic expansion assessment, like how this program could be used not only locally but in different regions. We're looking at support for community planning. Looked at training for workforce development to increase our workforce of pilots, and to provide regional emergency response support. And they can look at statewide, whether it be state agencies, university research. If we wanted to work with universities on any of the projects that they require data from, that'd be a great way to look at and do a contract with. We could do the economic development industry or coastal communities at a statewide level. National level, we can do only with U.S. Coast Guard sectors across the U.S. Provide support for tribal communities and coordinate in any emergency response actions. Next slide, please. So, sorry, during the community fair event, the team was able to do some flights, like over the tank inspection. They did a mapping of the biofuel tank farm, and they basically set these pillars or boundaries around the tank farm and set the height. That's one way you could do a 2D model, but in this case, what they did was a video of the tank farm. And if you were to use with a helicopter, it would cost like thousands of dollars, but we were able to do this at low cost. Another thing that we did was in terms of search and rescue, for those that are in the coastal community that have tundra or ice and water, really hard to see like during the winter. But this unit has a infrared that's able to lock on thermal images, thermal heat signatures, and it works in the night as well. Next slide, please. So the other thing that we did was look at the infrastructure inspection. We had Katie, Daniel, so went ahead and did a simple change detection of 2D maps of Unalakleet, water supply, a pump house. So the image was captured and processed using the drone deploy. And one good thing about it is that once you did this, you went and set the boundaries on her controller, and she selected the height, and it determined like how many photos it would take. I went ahead and processed those photos. Sometimes if it's like a large area, we'd have to go and stop the battery. But the good thing about this 2D map is that it can then be rendered with the software into 3D. Next slide, please. So in retrospect, we have seen that the first feasibility indicated that yes, drones are useful in assessing climate change. You got an overview of some of the pilot training aspects and components that this team did and what would be needed. You have looked at some of the recommended listings of the setup for the office space. You've seen some of the usage of the drone, like the infrastructure. The good thing about the infrastructure, you can look at elevation changes over time. We can look at bulk fuel tank farms at a height. You can model those safely and in a cost-effective manner. You can look at oil spills, search and rescue. You can do that to run with the team and be able to see heat signatures. So there's a wide variety of applications. And then lastly, you look at the regional expansion that this team is and they continue to go and look into, not only for our region, but state and at a national level. Next slide, please. So this is where the questions and comments. This photograph you see here, I'll talk a little about it. Katie Daniels and Skyview trainer Jay Garcia. We did a 3D scan on the Unalakleet city landfill. So just went ahead, like I said, with the tool, we could lock down the boundaries of where you want the drone to take photographs and the height. Once you set that, it'll automatically go at different angles, and using a software, we upload the data and using the software is able to render that into a 3D model. So it opens up to any questions you may have on the content that was discussed.
Really nice. John Henry, I really like your slides. Lots of good information.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. It was a team effort. A lot of people that were involved. Margaret Hall did an amazing job on formatting the presentation, Jessica Garron with the program she's on there as a support, and our pilots. So it was really a team effort. Thank you.
I just want to direct your attention to a question in the chat from Marianne Fidel. Thanks for the presentation. Could you talk a little bit about future plans? And great program.
Yeah. So during the community fair, we had talked with some of the regional entities that indicated their interest in looking at infrastructure like power utilities, transformers, power lines, the wind farm, water and sewer is another thing that was discussed. And then we had a regional, this was then caught on at a region level where there's interest from the Norton Sound Health Corporation and possibly Corey, their program director for infrastructure and water and sewer. So it was our hope that the services that we could provide, they would have a use for. So we're having a meeting this Friday to discuss with them. Just before, I think yesterday, we did this elevation change mock-up test bed on the Unalakleet Slough River, and that was designed to look at changes in elevation. This could pertain to like infrastructure, whether it be the water and sewer, like water utilities, or any of the critical infrastructure like buildings, like in the water, local water facility. So this elevation change, we looked at doing a baseline survey at different heights. The SCADIO has a resolution at different heights, ranging from like a centimeter to Jessica. What's the far range? Like a centimeter accuracy to, I think it was
About
a couple of feet.
10 centimeters, I would think, at 400 feet, but we haven't performed a specific test at the 400-foot level. So, but we range from, I would say that in general, we're working in the 1 to 5 centimeter range based on our regular flight heights.
Yeah, so this test that we did will indicate the capability of the drone to see elevation change over time, and we'll be able to present that hopefully to Sean Lee from Norton Sound Corporation and Sean McKnight, the court program director. But there are other areas other than that.
John Henry, I'm going to jump off, but I'm also participating in the Friday meeting with Sean Lee, the Zoom session or presentation. This is great.
Okay.
My interest in this has been looking at, I've been pondering over using a drone to go out and collect a water sample for me from the ocean. With it, within sight, so I don't have to maintain a boat motor and the whole works to go out and do it. But
Yeah.
I'll keep in touch with you guys. I have to leave a bit early for some errands, and I'll be in the session on Friday as well with Sean Lee and that group.
Yeah, and our economists looked at in our first project to look at just that case on water quality, doing an in-situ sample. So we do have some information based off of that first year or first project review.
Okay, so I'll connect again on Friday morning.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
John, we have a few more questions and comments coming through in the chat. I just want to touch back on a comment and question from Carol Oliver earlier on during the presentation. She said it would be great if our schools can implement the training and use of drones in the science classes. I'm just curious, has there been any youth engagement as part of your project?
Yeah, so we had a community fair. We had some students that came over that had an interest. We have discussed in the past on the expansion some ideas to incorporate this into tie into the technical, like vocational tech schools as a possibility for training expansion. And this could be something that I think mentioned to the schools. I think it's a great idea. That might still be something we could probably have to discuss with the teachers and the school district to see if that is of an interest. But initially, we looked at looking at vocational tech schools that could be targeted for those that are interested in getting the training done, and looking at regional entities to leverage their funding sources to allow them to do an investment in for their region, for them to look at different ways or this could be incorporated to lower the cost and provide data to their regional constituents. But yeah, so schools would definitely be something I'm sure we could look into in the future.
And I can add on a little bit to that as well, John. there is a drone program currently in the Bering Strait School District, and we have invited those folks to learn more about our project and are happy to collaborate with them. But the specific funding opportunity for us to work together hasn't presented itself. UAF also leads the Upward Bound program, which is focused on training high school students in coastal Alaska to fly drones in support of community monitoring. There's also another school K through 12 school-based drone program that is being led up and down the Kuskokwim River by the Alaska Satellite Facility. And then the Fresh Ice on Ice program is traveling around the state teaching students to fly drones as part of their work. And so there are a lot of initiatives throughout this, and those are just the ones that I know of that are directly connecting with communities in the YK region and in the Norton Sound. But there are numerous other programs already implemented in various school districts. And if you're interested in learning more about getting drones integrated into your school district, please reach out to this team or the Tribal Resilience Network, and we can put you in touch with some of the folks who are already focused on training students in K through 12 to fly drones.
Thanks, Jessica, too, for following on that. There are a couple more questions in the chat, but before we go to those, I just wanted to check in and see if there was any questions from folks on the phone. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay. Hearing none, let's go ahead and move to Michael. Comment, how often will you need to upgrade the drones and software you will be using? Is that budgeted into the program?
So Michael, so the drones that we got were from Skydio, and we had the Skydio X2E and the Skydio S2. They provide updates when they do come out, and it seems to be frequently. So it'd just be a matter of downloading the updates to the unit, and that's something that they're providing on their end.
And I might also put out that for our planning purposes and for the contracting mechanisms that we're putting together, we're assuming a 2-year lifespan for these drones. And yes, we're building in costs, overhead costs for contracting so that the drones can be replenished by NVU after the life cycle of these particular drones are complete. Similarly, the software licenses are built into the contracting costs, and just like John was saying about updates to the aircraft themselves, the computer, the firmware update to the aircraft. All of the software that we're using also has periodic updates that are pushed to us directly, but the cost for the maintaining the aircraft, purchasing new aircraft, and maintaining those software licenses are built into the contracting costs for the NVU drone team.
Okay, thanks, John and Jessica, for responding to that question. Next, we have a question from Peter, and also comment, interesting presentation, thank you. Have you had any issues in places you can't fly, like too close to the airport or other FAA regulations?
Yeah, so each community has their unique airspace designation. And Unalakleet, so there was restrictions during the day, but after prior to the Alaska Daylight Saving Time, after 7 o'clock, it would then open up the airspace so we can fly up to 400 feet. But if we are over a structure, we can fly in addition to that 400 feet above that structure. But other than that, we were restricted during the daytime based on the airspace restrictions, like it was indicated at the airport. Definitely a no-no unless you get a waiver. So we can get a waiver, and that waiver could take about like at most 90 days for them to review. So there could be unusual circumstances, and I think Jessica mentioned they might be like an emergency circumstance. Emergency, we could have a unique situation where we could request, due to emergency, we can request additional flight restrictions to allow us to fly. But other than that, other than a waiver and other than in emergency situation, we'd abide by airspace requirements. And then like post the Alaska Daylight Saving Time, we could fly like after 8 o'clock. Jessica, do you have any other items to add to that?
Sure. Yeah. John really addressed the most salient FAA regulations having to do with airspace restrictions around communities. But in addition, a very important part of this project was training and having the pilots be certified by the FAA to fly. By having their Part 107 certification, that allows them to have access to enter those waivers for either emergency operations or for flying beyond visual line of sight, or a number of other the waivers that need to be applied for. Additionally, there is a system called the LANC system, where if you're near an airport but not in completely restricted airspace, you can, as a certified FAA Part 107 pilot, say, I would like to fly in this semi-restricted area, and then you'll get permission to fly there as well. And that's something like up to 100 feet in certain areas or up to 200 feet in certain areas. But it all hinges on the fact that the pilot has to be certified by the FAA to access those airspace waivers and changes in requests. So that's one of the big FAA components that we were sure to include in the program. But other than that, it's just making sure that you're very aware of your airspace and coordinating with FAA and your local airport to make sure that you're flying safely and within the guidelines that the other people in our nation's airspace are using.
All right. Thanks again, John and Jessica. Lots of thanks in the chat for the presentation. We are coming down to the hour. I just want, looks like you have your contact information here. Just as we close, Jessica or John, if any of the folks that are on this webinar are interested in maybe doing some collaborative work with you, can you just talk about, is that something that you're open to? And if so, who would be a good point of contact within your team?
Most definitely, I would be very much interested, and I would be the person they want to get a hold of. Also, I'll coordinate with Jessica, of course. But going forward, this team, we'd be more than happy to meet some of the, whether it be tribe at a local level or a regional level, on any services that they need assistance on. And that's something that we're currently going through the contractual considerations and trying to solidify the different rates that go along with it to make it a feasible and self-sustaining program. But yes, feel free to give us a call. Jessica is really knowledgeable in the use of drones. She'd be a very good person to get a hold of on the breakdown of what drone to select, the associated software, and different price ranges. So any funded grants you're looking at, you want to be aware of the NDA, the National Defense Ability Authorization Act, what basically stipulates that you need to either have non-China-based products, or in this case, most currently like non-Russell products, any of the type of vendors that we work with.
And what he said. Please feel free if you have additional questions or interested in partnering or collaborating or just brainstorming on how you and your community could apply some of the knowledge you have learned here today to your own community's concerns. Just reach out to John or myself or Margie, and our contact information is here. And then, of course, you can reach us through the Tribal Resilience Network as well.
Yeah,
Well,
we're all we're still looking forward and trying to keep momentum going. I'd like to look at additional uses like other types of drones, with the LiDAR, fitted payloads. So that's something that we'll continue to strive for, is to continue to keep momentum going and continue to find other services for the drones that could be used. So this is really, I think this project is like one of the more pivotal steps for us. And it's really exciting because this is something that we've seen interest in at our regional level. And I'm really excited about the possibilities.
Well, thanks so much, John, and the entire team for your presentation today. Definitely know that there's lots of interest, and just want to, I'm grateful for you guys taking some time today to share with all of us on this call about your work, and certainly the time you took to prepare the presentation today. Thanks so much. And then Melinda, I don't know if you want to just end with any of these announcements before folks jump off.
Yes, I know that people are fastly leaving, but I want to raise, these are a couple events that are forthcoming. The Tribal Learning Network is going to have a project development writing workshop next week that is on our website. And in the interior in Fairbanks, there's a National Indian Timber Symposium that's happening next month, and the Just Transition Summit. The other thing I really want to emphasize, if you can pass the word, is the BIA Tribal Climate Resilience funding is open. That's the funding that helped to support this project here. And if there's interest, of course, in doing some project with that's funding, you know, that might be something to explore with John Henry and the partners he has here. Jessica and others, Margaret, as well as there's a youth section of funding in that. And so I just encourage you to go to the BIA Tribal Climate Resilience Program and look at that request for proposal. Thank you all. It was a great session. Great to hear more specifics about this project. So Hajragadistan, take care, and thank you to all who presented and were here.
Thank you.